If you're still struggling to figure out what the blockchain is, how anyone can make money from NFTs, and what any of this has to do with our health, then you're in the right place. My guest today has gone through a wild ride, from modeling financial crises and studying decentralized currencies to then decentralized digital health data. She went from an academic career in mathematics to now being the chief of staff at the science nonprofit Sage Bionetworks. She helps operationalize the strategy that would make health data more open, more shareable, and easier to reuse to advance biomedical discoveries. This is the Discovery Arc podcast. I am Drew Douglin, and today, let us welcome Mackenzie Wildman. All right, Mackenzie, what on earth is Web3? And what was Web 1 and 2?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The best way I can describe Web3 is starting with Web 1. So when the internet was invented, we started with web pages, maybe a little bit of chat, but in general, folks would go onto the internet to consume static information. When we transitioned to Web 2, one of the main markers of this was social media. Now people are creating content and uploading content. And where did all that content go? It got really centralized by a few main players like the Google, Apple, Meta. And, we create all this content, but then we're really just giving it to these huge corporations. So Web3 is all about taking ownership of that data and giving it back to the creators. So imagine a world where I create my content, maybe it's a picture or a post, and instead of just giving it to Instagram or giving it to X, it's going on chain, and I retain the rights to that. I have the content, and then I can layer whatever sort of top application on top. So whether I show that post on X or, somebody looks it up on Instagram, they're still looking at the same content that I created, and that is decentralized and not changing.
Got it. But isn't that all kept as a record anyway, where it currently is housed? Or is it just taking the power away from those potential big
by decentralizing, you're adding redundancy. So, if Google goes away or Apple goes away, then so does all of our data. Instead, when things live on chain, it's in a record on anyone's server and lives in perpetuity regardless of, who stays and who goes.
Got it. Yeah. And obviously this is a very new phenomenon, and we're definitely going to come back to speaking about it later, but you didn't start there, obviously. So tell me about your sort of background and early interest. Where did that come from?
Yeah, I have a sort of non-traditional path. I started my career with a PhD in math. I always loved math in school. I never wanted to stop studying it, so I figured I would go to grad school. I wanted to be an academic and scored a great postdoc at UC Santa Barbara. And while I was there, I did a total 180. I became disenchanted with academia and wanted a job.
Why the disenchantment? I'm always interested.
I don't have a great answer to that. I think a lot of the things that lured me into academia, like the flexible lifestyle, the amount of autonomy, while those seemed like advantages when I was a student, when I, joined faculty, all of a sudden they became huge stressors and really lost their appeal. Instead of, the people that I was working with, my mentors, they were working really constantly. And they were happy with that because they loved what they were doing so much. They loved their research, and I did not. I was ready to try something else. At the same time, my husband and I fell in love with Santa Barbara. So I left my postdoc, and then we needed jobs. And so I realized really quickly that doing a PhD in math, and I wasn't doing like computational math, I was doing like pencil and paper math. So I had no real marketable skills for which to find a job. That was a rude awakening. I had studied probability, and so I thought maybe a data scientist would be a natural transition. But I had to learn to code to do that. So figured that out, did an internship as a software engineer at a local nonprofit. And then that was enough to get an offer from the chief data scientist of a local startup called Evidation Health. So that's when I first got into health data and health tech.
So what were you, with your pen and paper, pencil and paper, what were you working on for your, I guess, PhD, postdoc work, and then, academic life?
So I was doing math that was applied to finance and financial systems, but only in like a vague sense. So my dissertation was on fractional noise used to model underlying asset values um, with a fractional sense of randomness. So yeah, I don't want to talk about that anymore. I'm just
What
so glad it's over.
was it
Um,
enough to kind of be doing like a post-mortem on like the financial crisis in, say, like 2008?
um, no, but during my postdoc, I started doing work in systemic risk, which was it's like looking at an interconnected system of banks or financial institutions. So they all lend to each other back and forth, um, but each each institution only knows the specific lending structure of their own loans. So you can end up with some really weird uh, some really weird patterns in a banking network, like cycles or things that really make risk of a systemic collapse more or less. I mean, it's really dependent on the structure of those banks. And so we did research into whether a clearinghouse or like a central bank through which that mediated interbank loans, whether that would improve the stability. And so that has more direct ties to the financial crisis. I was actually working at an intern. I went to undergrad where we did co-ops. So I did a 6-month co-op at a prop shop called Susquehanna, and I was there during the financial collapse. So these
Oh,
folks
wow.
that had been on speed dial on our old desk phones, we showed up to work one day and the lines were dead. Like there was nobody at the other end of the line anymore. It was so wild. And I remember my manager saying to me, like, you have no concept of what's going on right now, but you will look back and say, I worked on a fixed income trading desk in spring 2008. And yeah, it was a pretty cool experience.
Yeah. I think that was it like sort of a domino theory that you were kind of explaining to me before, like with some things changing and then it has a massive effect on the whole rest of the system?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. Absolutely. If one bank defaults on its loans to the other banks, then that can really have a cascade that again depends on the structure or the patterns of that interbank lending.
Have you seen The Big Short, the movie?
I have, yeah.
Did you like it? Do you think it did a good job?
Better job than I could do at explaining what happened for sure.
Yeah, that was really one of my favorite movies. So where are we headed now, do you think? Like, before we get back to your career, but inflation, government spending been through the roof,
Oh
credit card
God.
debt, like, is the next crash around the corner? What do you feel like?
If I knew the answer to that, then I don't know if I'd be here, right? Like that's the $1,000,000,000,000,000 question. I have no idea. I have no
Hmm.
idea where we're headed, and I really would be the least qualified person to tell you.
So what was the moment you kind of realized then that, okay, I've got this mathematics background, but it would be a good idea to code?
um, well, I was introduced to a couple of hiring managers through my network.
Hmm.
And one of them in particular gave me, as part of the job application, a coding test. And that was the most rude awakening to open up this document and start a test and have no idea even how to start. It was absolutely in that moment that I was like, oh shoot, like I need to figure this out. And then once I did, oh my gosh, it's like unwrapping a present. It's so fun. Like the problems that I was working on in grad school and in my postdoc, like I would be banging my head against a wall for months, if not years, on some of these problems. And now, I'm writing programs to solve things that they just felt fun in comparison. Like they're just puzzles. And yeah, that I think applies to sort of my career as a whole. Like I've always enjoyed so much what I've been doing. I think because having that grad school experience and all of that grit and that, just there's these like super theoretical problems, that since then, like everything feels more like a puzzle.
Nice. How long did it take you to sort of, I guess, become proficient for what you needed?
Uh, in one sense, I figured out enough in a couple weeks, but in another sense, I'm still learning how to become proficient.
Okay, so then you move off into health. So what was that transition like from world of finance into health and data science?
Yeah, I loved it. When I was looking at this sort of career change in front of me and trying to get into data science, I was like, what am I going to aim for? There's so many ways to apply data science. And I thought, why not health? Like these are the most important problems to be working on. Um, yeah, why not try and work in health? And so I was really lucky to get a job at Evidation, the health tech startup, and I worked in a sort of kind of like a labs component or an R&D component. And so while Evidation was building its own tech platform, I was scrapping together an open source version that we could use for nonprofits and academic partners. So we built a study companion app for running digital health studies. So a data collection pipeline, a mobile app for participants to interact with during the study and really enable bi-directional communication with study participants. And I'm really proud that we launched this and ran multiple large studies and collected a lot of really useful data that's still being used.
So it's collecting health data from participants to then, uh, you know, predict health outcomes, learn
Yeah.
more about
Yeah,
disease.
like developing digital biomarkers, understanding symptom trajectories and changes throughout disease, mostly observational, but yeah, all digital health and patient generated or participant generated health data.
How did you feel about joining a startup? Like, did it feel risky, and like, what is startup world like?
This company was about 60 people when I joined. So not a startup in quite the sense that you don't know if you'll still be there in a tomorrow, which I did get to experience later and was quite exciting. So it wasn't so small. It had a lot of resources already and had some really great people. That was definitely the best part about it, the people that I was working with and working for. And yeah, there's so much less red tape, so much more of like a jump in and how can I solve this problem attitude at startups that I really enjoy.
Yeah, sounds like cohesive, tight knit. Get a bit of
Mm-hmm.
experience doing everything.
But it didn't last. I was there for 4 or 5 years, and we were up to almost 300 people by the time I left.
Wow, wow. So, how did your role change during that time?
Um, well, it grew from an independent contributor to building out a team to build this platform and run studies on it. And then I changed. I moved into a more of a solutions architect role for our enterprise platform. So working with clients to understand what they needed, and then working with our internal teams to understand how the tech that we had could meet those needs.
Cool. How did you get there? Like, what were the skills that you kind of enabled you to grow, I guess, into those roles? Is it just kind of like picking up different things here and there, management experience, new, tech?
Yeah, I don't know if I could have answered this then when it was happening, but looking back, I think there are two main skills that have really helped me grow. One is the ability to see both the forest and the trees. I love that metaphor. But to take a step back and really understand, how projects fit into a bigger company, or understand how clients' needs fit into a larger agenda, or figure out how a team can be an impactful part of a business unit. So kind of taking one step back in perspective, I think, has always been really helpful. And the other is communication. I think that, you can be a genius and you can do really, really hard work, but if you can't effectively communicate that work, I think you'll kind of get stuck. And so, having the experience of teaching and of, giving lots of presentations in grad school, and then, morphing that into a more industry setting where, I'm trying to be a manager, I'm trying to, communicate up and be sort of strategic about how to best do that.
Cool. Yeah, I feel like for a lot of people in STEM, they can be very detail oriented, but maybe lacking in the bigger picture, overall impact, and then communicating that to different audiences too.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you've been there, what, 4 or 5 years? Then
Mhm.
what happens? Is the story? Is this where the story gets juicier
Yeah,
for
story gets a little more
NFT
interesting.
land?
Takes a super weird turn. So while I was there, had made a friend and mentor who I felt like he really invested in me. I feel like he got to know me, and he was he was a third party. He wasn't at the company. And so as I was trying to, getting the itch to try and figure out what to do next, I went out for lunch with him and I said, what should my career goal be? Like, what should I be aiming for here? Like, and I was hoping he would say something like, "Oh, Mackenzie, you would make a great CTO," or, "You should try." And instead he said, "You belong at a startup." He said, "You're scrappy, you like to work fast, you like to wear a lot of hats." He said, "Oh, and I just happened to start a company recently. Come work with me." and and almost before I asked him what his new company was doing, I was on board. I was just so excited to get into a company at that early stage.
Wow.
We were just at seed stage. So yeah, that's how I got into Web3 without knowing the first thing about Web3. Um, yeah.
Did you have this idea that like you were onto something, like even though you didn't know that this was going to become big, or was really sort of breakthrough ground?
I think I felt that about the person, about the
Mm.
mentor. I had this kind of confidence in him and respect for him and his career that I knew that if he presented with me with an opportunity that I would probably jump at it, which is what I did. Yeah, and it really felt like taking a step into the future. It's wild. Like the projects that we worked on and the tech that we built, it's like it could be out of a sci-fi movie. Like it just felt so fresh and new and exciting. The engineers were the smartest engineers I've ever worked with. So cool, and everyone's so passionate. And we were at 25 people, and so you don't do that if you're not passionate about what you're doing. And that was a cool way to work.
Yeah. So the company itself, I think I remember before you telling me that there was a link to NFTs.
Yes.
And I
Yeah.
felt like when I first heard about NFTs, I thought it was a joke. So like, what are they? What's going on here?
Okay, NFTs stands for non-fungible tokens. So you think about, again, I can explain this by explaining the opposite. So fungible token is think about like a dollar bill. You can have this dollar bill or that dollar bill. It doesn't matter which you have, they're exchangeable. You can't tell the difference. Um, Non-fungible tokens are used to represent or associate individual things that can't be swapped out. So something non-fungible is like the Mona Lisa is non-fungible. My favorite sweatshirt is non-fungible. Things like this. And so what this means in Web3 technology is really just contracts written that can then be exchanged, bought and sold. They could be used for, different ideas of utility. But these would live on chain. And so NFTs are often used for art, collectible art. So I think most people, when they think of NFTs, they think of like a picture they could take a screenshot of on their phone. But this contract assigns ownership to one person or one wallet. So we at Olaplex, this was the startup. We built infrastructure for NFTs, and we had some enterprise clients. One of our main clients was using NFTs for adding value from name and image likeness in college athletes. So using them as a sort of fundraising mechanism, creating collectible NFTs. And passing royalties back to the athletes and the schools. We also worked on a lot of loyalty programs. So like Starbucks, for example, launched an NFT program. You can do things to earn tokens and collect them. And then, ideally there will be a secondary market. These will sort of grow in value. And then I think the application for NFTs that I'm most interested in or expect to see a lot more of in the future is solving a provenance problem. So NFTs associated with rare whiskey bottles, for example, the bottles stay in storage, but the ownership via contract or NFT can be bought and sold and then redeemed in exchange for possession of that physical bottle itself.
So it seems like with artwork, the value of the token almost seems tied to the owner, like the provenance of it.
Mm-hmm.
Would that
yeah,
right?
and like artwork, the value is in desirability. Like if I'm the only person who knows about it, I'm the only person who wants it. Maybe it's valuable to me, but there won't be a lot of, like global value there. But when something becomes desirable, even if it's just like a picture of Jack Dorsey's first tweet, then, if people want it, then there's value.
But would the picture be coming from him himself? Or could everyone have taken this picture?
Anyone could have taken the picture. Anyone could take a screenshot of the picture, but there's one token and one which is just really a contract that lives on chain. And so it's accepted that this is what folks want. I could create a new NFT with the same picture and nobody would want it, because this isn't the one.
This is like the official stamp of approval. Wow, that's so interesting. Because when I think of like like you said with the Mona Lisa, it's like we put all the stock in the fact that it's a specific artist who created it, right? As opposed to it's the image itself.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So how do NFTs then and these tokens relate to? Do they relate to cryptocurrency?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So cryptocurrency tokens are a fungible version of a token.
I see. Got it. And then it's all on a decentralized chain.
Yes, all transactions live on chain.
Got it. What did your parents think of this like career move, by the way? It's left field for sure.
Yeah, that's a good question. My parents so supportive. They're like, as long as this is gonna pay your bills, like they don't care. No, don't put that in. My parents super supportive, not super understanding, but they're always willing to test out some technology. I love it. So before we would release any updates, we'd put it through the mom and dad test.
That's always a good test. I feel the same with science communication.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So, what's the working environment like broadly in crypto land? Was it a weird cult? And also, I guess you mentioned before, as a woman, it was maybe kind of interesting too.
Yeah, it's a lot of white guys, really, and there's some pretty weird culture. We call ourselves, or they call themselves. I still don't. I still feel like I'm like on the fence. But degen culture it's a huge thing. So everyone's on Twitter, everyone's gaming, and everyone is also writing great, like cutting edge software. It's pretty bizarre. It's weird. I mean, I met some fantastic individuals, but you know, if I zoom out and look at the communities as a whole, it's an odd bunch for sure.
Yeah. I guess I don't know if this is correct, but I sort of see overlapping Venn diagrams of, yeah, like gamers, people on Reddit, people building software.
Yeah, totally, totally. And then like probably people less listening to like metal music. I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know.
fascinating.
I went from like feeling like I went from feeling young to feeling old in a day, and it was the day that I started working in Web3.
Yeah, I'm in some circles, not connected at all to like development, but yeah, there's just certain languages which is used, and I'm like, what are you guys talking about? It just suddenly feels so old.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. It was very bizarre.
So you were living through history back in the financial crisis, but then also I feel like you lived through history again with the big event of the FTX crashing
Yes.
down and the Sam Bankman-Fried saga. So, can you take me back to that day? Like, did you have any insight this was going to come crashing down, or what was the atmosphere like when you heard?
Yeah, this was really a bummer. This was really a bummer. So the day that FTX collapsed, we found out about it on Twitter, as did everyone, and you know, instantly realizing this is going to be a big deal. This is gonna impact more folks than just degens. Um, and it did. A lot of my coworkers had, you know, huge amounts of savings invested in FTX, and it was, you
Hmm.
know, it was gone. It was all gone. And our anchor client lost their money in FTX as well. So yeah, we lost our anchor client overnight, and that really changed the trajectory for the company. Um, all of the enterprise clients that we were pursuing, they put their crypto projects on hold. Really got spooked and didn't have the time pressure to pursue. Um, so we pivoted to building more infrastructure tools. You know, pivoting towards developers as our customers and not enterprise clients, and you know, did our best to weather the storm.
How long were you still there after that?
Um, about a year, maybe a little less than a
Oh,
year.
okay. Did you leave voluntarily?
I I did not choose to leave. I held on until the bitter, bitter end. We cut down to about 6 people,
Hmm.
and we really did everything we could. Actually, not a single person quit, which I think is a really cool testament to how invested we all were. And it felt so close, you know, up until the end. We were looking at an acqui-hire, we were looking at signing contract, and it just unfortunately did not pan out.
Yeah. So now you're back into health and data science.
Now I'm back into health tech. Yeah, so I went back on the job market, and the data scientist who originally hired me at Evidation is now the president and CEO of Sage Bionetworks. And I convinced him that I could be his chief of staff and help him make change and advance our mission at Sage.
What does a chief of staff do? And how does that role compare at Sage now compared to your past positions at like Evidation?
Yeah, opposed to bothering you all day and my other coworkers. um, you know, the job changes every day, but I'm really focused on our internal initiatives and supporting our president and CEO and the rest of our leadership team. So this looks, it takes a lot of different forms, a lot of internal communication, both up and down throughout the org. So understanding what the workforce needs to know, and then also bubbling up risks, concerns, things that our leadership team needs to know. I act as a sort of liaison between our leadership team and the rest of the organization. I help work on strategy, so coming up with our goals and OKRs, and then figuring out how those apply to the rest of the organization. Anything that's really cross-functional and mainly internal comes to my desk. So rolling out a new product that involves not just tech, but involves governance, involves marketing, involves tech support, all of those functions. I help to coordinate that.
Cool. So I guess the skills you need would be, again, like detail plus, seeing the bigger picture, organization, strategy.
So much prioritization, and not just for myself, but for our leadership team. So understanding, what do they need to know, and, what's the most efficient way to get them that information.
Would you consider jumping back again to finance or like crypto land?
Yeah, absolutely. I am mainly motivated by the folks that I'm working with and helping to support. And so I would not rule out any industry if I got the chance to work with the right people.
Do you think that since that all went down, do you think it's recovered or recovering? Like, what do you think the outlook is?
Well, my wallet's looking pretty good right now. So that's something.
Personal outlook.
Personal outlook is great. No, I anticipate a pretty rocky road. I think we're still a ways off from mass adoption, and I do see that in the future. But I am sure we have some more cycles to get through first.
What do you think about gold?
Personal outlook not good.
Stocks are dwindling.
Just you can buy it at Costco now.
Yeah, they're doing gold bars with all the chaos that ensued. Yeah, they're doing gold bars.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, diversifying is always good, so I wouldn't rule it out.
All right. Well, outside of cross-functional teams and strategy, what are some of your personal interests outside of work? Tell me about cooking in Wildtown.
So this started as a New Year's resolution. I have a husband and 2 young children. I cook for them pretty much every day. And I thought, how could I improve my daily life? I thought, I want cooking to feel more like the highlight of my day and less like a chore. And so this year I've been doing a lot more experimenting with different recipes, cookbooks, creators, and I started a pretend cooking show called Cooking in Wildtown that usually features 1 or more screaming children or crying children or dog even. I think in my most recent episode, my dog ate a raw steak off the counter. So it leans into the wildness of having little kids and living in chaos, but it's been really fun. It started out as like some Snapchats, and now I'm like doing basic editing. It's a fun hobby.
Yeah, it's really cute. Are there certain types of cuisine you feel like you gravitate towards?
No, but I do feel like I win if my whole family will eat it. So I do a lot of like deconstructible things or like pasta. I mean, let's be real. My kids mostly eat beige foods.
I did enjoy the paella recipe, which I think, what was your pronunciation? It was like paella.
Oh, I called it paella, which I blame my good friends whose last name is Myella. And so I spent the whole episode mispronouncing paella. Yeah. But that's what cooking in Wild Town is all about. We're not perfect. We're not even right. But it tasted good. Actually,
And
it's really good.
the wine pairing, of course.
Yes, my other favorite hobby is tasting wine, consuming wine. I live in Santa Barbara, and so it's very convenient to get to enjoy local stuff. And yeah, often wine and cooking in Wild Town.
Can you tell the difference between cheaper and very, very expensive wine? And can
In
you tell blind?
in general, yes. In general, yes. We do a lot of blind tasting with friends, and we'll often put like a $2 chuck in with our lineup just to see to kind of make sure, like, are we spending our money in the right place here? And yeah, it always gets picked out.
Do you ever think back and regret almost getting into like good food and wine and thinking like,
Yes,
damn, my taste is so expensive now, and I wish like I just had the ignorance of like my
yes.
former self.
Yes, I have this conversation a lot. And my sort of wine mentor even said to me, he said, "You're starting to get into this, Mackenzie. This is going to end up costing you millions of dollars through your lifetime." And I'm like, yeah, right, yeah, right. And I'm afraid it's going to be true. It's just
Yeah,
so good when it's good. It's so good.
it's like expensive hobbies as well, right? That you take up and you're like, oh no, this is going to cost me.
Yeah, right. Like I wish I liked, I don't know, gin and tonics and, long
Yeah,
walks.
like vodka from the gas station.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Bottom shelf vodka and gas station hot dogs.
Yeah, yeah. That's for the next startup you join.
Yeah.
Hey, what are your kiddos into, like terms of hobbies or interests, or are they going to become mathematicians?
What are their hobbies? Being wild, I guess. My son just started pre-K last week, so that's been a big transition for us, but he's pretty excited about it. He loves books, he loves reading, he actually does help cook. And then my daughter is only 1.5, and she's kind of like a feral animal. She runs around the house like roaring or growling, but and like bothering her brother. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. They're both into music. We love lots of
Right.
dance parties at the house, and we'll get them into sports soon and see kind of what sticks.
Dancing's good. Great for the mental.
Yes.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, maybe I'll throw at you my final question, the tradition on the podcast, which is if you could give your one piece of advice or wisdom in the area of work, productivity, health, growth, anything, what do you think it would be and why?
Yes. Um, my one piece of advice is around communication. This is really a theme and passion for me that spans all those areas. Um, I think my one piece of advice is to spend a minute strategizing your communication, your technique, how you're going to say what you're going to say, who you're saying it to, before it just kind of pops out. Advice that I can still learn a lot from, for sure, myself. But I think that can have a really huge impact.
Yeah, I think everywhere too. It's like not just career, but definitely personal relationships. It's absolutely
Yes,
key.
yes, like communication strategy. Yeah, I feel like it can have a huge impact.
Well, I love it. Where should people go if they want to connect with you? I know you're on LinkedIn. Are you in the other social media platforms?
I am
Are you
not.
released? Have you released Wildtown yet?
No, it's not even discoverable. So you'll have to just ask me if you want to see one of these episodes, these fine cinematographic experiences. Yep, definitely LinkedIn. I'm not even on crypto Twitter, but yeah, always happy to connect.
Yeah, if anyone puts Wildtown in the comments section of YouTube for the episode, we'll send it to you
Yes, yes, I'll send you a link.
by request only.
Yes.
All right. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.